I was falling. The wind roared past my ears, my body slicing through the air like a lifeless doll. The night sky blurred as the city lights twisted into a dizzying mess. My heart pounded in my chest, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The pain was brief, a numbing shock before everything went black. Then, nothing. And yet, I woke up. Again. The first thing I heard was a voice. A voice I knew too well. Sweet, innocent, and yet dripping with greed. "Olivia, could you lend me some money? I really want to go to Myanmar to find my father. Once I inherit the family business, I'll pay you back tenfold." My breath hitched. My body stiffened. This moment, this exact moment, had already happened before. I turned my head slowly and saw her. Luna. My roommate. My murderer. She stood in front of me, clutching her phone with wide, excited eyes, completely oblivious to the sheer horror crawling up my spine. The memories of my past life rushed back in a suffocating wave. I had been here. I had lived through this. I had died because of her. The betrayal. The deceit. The agony of falling from that rooftop, knowing that the person I trusted had pushed me to my death. And now, I was back. Reborn. Given a second chance. My fingers clenched into fists beneath the desk. I had learned my lesson. Trust no one. Luna was still talking, still spinning her delusional dream of becoming a princess. "I'm already 18 years old. If I go claim my kinship, I can immediately get the right to inherit. I was always meant for this life, Olivia. I knew it." I forced my expression to remain neutral as I processed the insanity of her words. This was the same Luna who had thrown me to my death simply because I had warned her. I had suspected it was a scam, I had tried to stop her, and in return, she had destroyed me. Not this time. This time, I wasn't going to be her victim. I was going to be her nightmare. I cast my gaze around the dorm room. The other girls, Isabel, Ava, and Arya, were watching us with interest. They didn't care about me. In my past life, they had mocked me, used me, and discarded me like trash when Luna turned them against me. "Olivia," Luna whined, clutching my arm and shaking it gently. "You're the richest one here. You can afford to help me. Just lend me 3,000 yuan, please?" The words were the same. The manipulative tone. The fake tears. It was all plain. G out exactly as before. But this time, I was different. I leaned back in my chair and smiled, feigning innocence. "Oh, Luna. I'd love to help, but..." I let my voice tremble, reaching for my chest dramatically. "I don't have the money." Luna's face twisted. "What?" The other girls frowned, exchanging confused glances. "Olivia, what are you saying? You always have money." I suddenly convulsed, my body jerking violently as I collapsed onto my bed. Foam bubbled up my lips as I gasped, pretending to struggle for breath. The room exploded in panic. "Oh my God. Is she having a seizure?" Ava shrieked, stumbling away. Luna leaped back, her expression torn between horror and disbelief. She never said she was sick." I forced my body to shake harder before reaching under my pillow and pulling out a small spray bottle. I inhaled sharply, then let my body go still. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then, I let out a weak, pitiful whisper. "I have epilepsy." Luna's expression. soured instantly. She had always been disgusted by anything imperfect. She didn't want to associate with people who were sick, poor, or weak. Well, she said slowly, backing away. You could have said so earlier. The other girls hesitated before inching away from me, their expressions wary. Perfect. For the next few days, I played my part. The fragile, sickly Olivia. The quiet, pitiful Olivia who couldn't possibly help anyone. And just like that, they stopped bothering me. Luna was growing. Desperate. She had set her sights on William next, my boyfriend. My ex-boyfriend, really. In my past life, he had betrayed me just as cruelly as Luna had. I was waiting for it. Waiting for her to go to him, to whisper sweet lies into his ear. Sure enough, one evening, she ran out of the dormitory clutching her phone. When she returned hours later, she was glowing with victory. She had him. Just like before. William called me that night. The moment I answered, his voice was filled with anger. Olivia, I didn't expect you to be so heartless, he spat. Luna is suffering, and you wouldn't even lend her money? Do you know how miserable her life is? I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Was this the same boy who had once held my hand, whispered love to me under the stars? I had been so blind. I let out a small laugh. William, I said, my voice ice cold, are you talking to me, or to your new girlfriend? He stilled. What are you saying? I smiled, leaning back again. Este my pillow. You love her, don't you? Luna and we're just friends, he stammered. Then why are you defending her? I asked sweetly. If she's nothing to you, why do you care so much about what I do? His silence was deafening. The next morning, I called my father. What's wrong, sweetheart, he teased. Ran out of money already? I swallowed hard. I had missed his voice. In my past life, my parents had died grieving me. They had cried themselves into exhaustion. They had never been the same. But this time, I would protect them. Dad, I said softly, I just wanted to say, I love you. Silence. Then a chuckle. Where's this coming from? I smiled. I just wanted you to know. Tomorrow, I would go home. I would warn my father about William. I would cut him off. I would change everything. Luna thought she was about to start her dream life. She had no idea. This time, I was the one pulling the strings. This time, I was the one who would win. Returning home felt surreal. The grand gates of our family estate swung open, revealing the familiar white mansion nestled among tall, old trees. The smell of freshly cut grass mixed with the comforting aroma of my father's cooking. A lump formed in my throat. In my past life, I had been too caught up in my foolish devotion to William to appreciate these little things. But now, standing here again, I swore to myself I would never take my family for granted again. Nathaniel, our lawn G-time driver and house steward, greeted me at the entrance with a warm smile. Miss Olivia, welcome back. Your father has been eagerly waiting for you. I smiled at him, a genuine one this time. Thank you, Nathaniel. It's good to be back. Inside, my father was in the kitchen, humming a familiar tune as he cooked. My heart clenched at the sight of him. The last time I had seen him, he had been a broken man, grieving my death. But here he was, alive, full of energy. Dad, I called softly. He turned. Ed, his face lighting up. Olivia. What a surprise. You never come home on weekends. What's the occasion? I walked over and hugged him tightly. He stiffened for a moment before chuckling and patting my back. All right, what's gotten into you? I pulled away and forced a teasing smile. I just missed your sweet and sour fish. He laughed. Then you're in luck. I was just making it. Go freshen up, and we'll have dinner soon. As I climbed the stairs to my old room, I could hear my father humming. Gee again, unaware of the storm I was about to bring into our lives. That night, after dinner, I sat across from my father in the living room, pretending to be absorbed in my phone. Dad, I started carefully, do you remember that boy from my school? William? He looked up from his newspaper and frowned. The one we've been sponsoring? What about him? I hesitated for a beat before speaking. I don't think we should support him anymore. His brows knitted together. Why? I took a deep breath, carefully choosing my words. I recently found out that he's been lying to me. He's not who I thought he was. I think he's using our kindness for his own gain. My father studied me for a long moment before sighing. Olivia, I trust your judgment. If you think cutting him off is the right decision, then I'll make the arrangements tomorrow. I exhaled, relief washing over me. Thank you, Dad. That was one threat neutralized. Now, on to the next one, Luna. The following G-Day at school, I returned to the dormitory with a renewed sense of purpose. My supposed friends were whispering in hushed tones when I entered, but they quickly fell silent, eyes darting away guiltily. Luna was sitting on her bed, clutching her phone with a smug smile. No doubt texting William, celebrating her so-called victory. I walked past them, pretending not to notice. I had bigger things to handle. That evening, as I packed up the last of my things to move out of the dormitory, my phone buzzed. It was William. I smirked before answering. Hello? His voice was filled with frustration. Olivia, what did you do? My tuition has been cut off. I leaned against my desk, enjoying the moment. Oh. Didn't Luna tell you? My family isn't in the business of supporting traitors. Traitor? Olivia, this is ridiculous. You're being childish. Am I? I interrupted, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. Then let's see how childish I can be. Because, William, I'm just getting started. I hun. Gee up, my heart pounding in satisfaction. Luna and William thought they had one. They had no idea. I was coming for them. Olivia knew she had to be meticulous. She sat in the back of the library, her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. Every keystroke was precise, calculated. She wasn't just planning revenge, she was crafting the perfect downfall. The internet was an endless maze, but she had learned how to navigate its dark alleys. If Luna and William thought they could manipulate people so easily, they had no idea what true manipulation looked like. She pulled up old forum posts, cross-referencing. Said with anonymous complaints about similar scams. Luna wasn't the first girl to fall for this con, the promise of sudden wealth, a new life, an escape from mediocrity. But she would be the last to betray Olivia. A smirk curled on her lips. Luna had borrowed money from dubious sources, and Olivia had seen the signs. The desperate whispers, the sudden shift in Luna's demeanor, she was on the edge of something irreversible. It was time to push her over. The next day, Olivia walked in to the dormitory, her presence commanding. She didn't have to speak, everyone already knew something was different. Luna sat on the bed, hunched over her phone, eyes darting nervously toward Olivia. The rest of the roommates avoided her gaze, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Olivia tossed her bag onto her bed and turned to Luna. "Have you packed?" Luna blinked, confused. "What?" "For Myanmar. Isn't that where your father is? Or did you already realize it's all a scam?" A pin drop silence. CE settled in the room. The others watched, waiting for the drama to unfold. Luna's hands trembled slightly, but she forced a laugh. "Of course not. My father will send for me soon." "Oh?" Olivia tilted her head. "Because from what I hear, people who go there never return. And those who do, well, they aren't the same." Luna's lips parted, but no words came. Olivia leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to be chilling. "Tell me, Luna. Are you sure this is what you want? Because once you step onto that path, there's no coming back." Luna swallowed hard. Olivia could see the fear creeping in. Later that night, Olivia received a message from an unknown number. "Unknown, you know too much. Stay out of this." She stared at the message, heart pounding. A challenge. She smiled. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The next morning, Olivia sat at the edge of her bed, her phone in hand. The message from the unknown number still lingered on her screen. "Stay out of this." She scoffed. If they thought a simple text would scare her, they clearly didn't understand who they were dealing with. Olivia had been betrayed, murdered, and reborn. Fear had no place in her heart anymore. She got to work. Pulling up her laptop, she traced the message's origin through multiple proxies. Whoever sent it was careful, but Olivia was smarter. She followed digital breadcrumbs, each leading her deeper into a tangled web of deceit. And then, she found something interesting. The message had come from a burner phone registered near William's dormitory. A slow smile spread across her lips. So, William was getting nervous. Good. By midday, Olivia had set her next trap. She sent Luna a simple text. "Olivia, let's talk. Outside the library. Now." It didn't take long for Luna to respond. Her desperation was showing. "Luna, why? What do you want?" Olivia answers. 15 minutes later, Olivia stood under the library's stone archway, arms crossed as Luna approached. Her former roommate looked tired, her usual arrogant confidence crumbling. "What do you want?" Luna demanded, crossing her arms tightly. Olivia took a step closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "You took out a loan, didn't you?" Luna's eyes widened. "How?" "You're sloppy," Olivia cut her off. "And desperate. They own you now, don't they? You're trying to pay them back before they ruin you." Luna's mouth opened, then shut. Her silence was confirmation enough. Olivia leaned in. "I could help you, you know. But first, you need to tell me the truth about Myanmar." Luna hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. But you won't like what you hear." Luan. A's lips trembled as she glanced around the courtyard. Students bustled past, oblivious to the tension between the two young women under the library's stone archway. Olivia waited, arms crossed, her patience waning. She had no time for Luna's hesitation. "Tell me," Olivia pressed. "Now." Luna exhaled shakily. I don't know everything, but I know enough. The people who contacted me, they're not just looking for lost heirs. They're running something bigger, something darker." Olivia's grip tightened. "Ed on her sleeves. Organ trafficking?" she guessed. Luna flinched. "Worse. It's a network, Olivia. They lure people in with promises of family and wealth, but once you step foot in Myanmar, you're trapped. Some disappear. Others are never the same when they come back." A chill ran down Olivia's spine, but she didn't show it. "Who contacted you?" Luna hesitated. "Someone named James. He's a recruiter. He said he worked for the richest man in Myanmar, that he was bringing lost children home. But I overheard him on the phone once. He wasn't looking for family. He was making deals." "Deals? With who?" Luna swallowed hard. "Black market buyers. High-profile ones. People with power. And he mentioned you, Olivia. Said you were a high-value asset." The weight of Luna's words settled over Olivia like a thick fog. She had expected a scam, but this was worse than she had imagined. She had been marked. Again. She exhaled, forcing herself to stay calm. "When's the next meeting?" "Sunday night. At the abandoned train station. He's meeting his contact there." Olivia nodded, mind racing. "Good. You're going to introduce me." Luna's eyes widened. "Are you insane? You can't." Olivia cut her off with a cold smile. "I'm not asking. You'll take me there, or you'll face them alone. Your choice." Luna paled, but she nodded. "Fine. I'll do it." Olivia turned on her heel, walking away without another word. The game was Chen. Jing. And this time, she was the hunter, not the prey. Olivia had spent the next 2 days meticulously planning her next move. She wasn't going to walk blindly into a trap, not this time. If James and his network wanted to play with fire, she would be the one to light the match. She studied Luna closely, watching every nervous twitch, every hesitant breath. Luna was still trying to weigh her options, to decide whether betraying Olivia might give her a better chance at escaping. But Olivia wasn't naive anymore. "You're not thinking of backing out, are you?" Olivia's voice was deceptively calm as she leaned against the dormitory desk, her sharp gaze pinned on Luna. Luna flinched. "No. I already told you, I'll take you to the meeting." Olivia smirked. "Good. Because if you try anything stupid, I'll make sure you regret it." Luna swallowed hard and nodded. The night air was thick with humidity, wrapping around Olivia like a second skin as she stepped onto the cracked pavement. Tea of the old train station. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows over rusted tracks and forgotten train cars. Luna led the way, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to shield herself from an unseen force. Olivia, on the other hand, moved with purpose. She wasn't here to cower. She was here to take control. James stood under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a smug smile that sent a spike of anger through Olivia's chest. "Luna," he greeted, his gaze sweeping over her before landing on Olivia. "And you must be Olivia." Olivia didn't flinch. "That's right." James chuckled, shaking his head. You've got guts, I'll give you that. She crossed her arms. Cut the small talk. I want to know what's really happening to the people who go to Myanmar. James tilted his head. And why would I tell you that? Olivia smiled, slow and calculated. Because if you don't, I'll make sure the entire world KN. How's about your little operation? For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed James's face. Behind them, a train whistle sounded in the distance. The tension thickened. James let out a low chuckle. You think you can threaten me, girl? Olivia met his gaze, unblinking. I don't think. I know. Luna shifted uncomfortably beside her, but Olivia didn't let the movement distract her. James sighed. You're bold, I'll give you that. But you're also out of your league. Olivia stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Try me. James stared at her for a long moment before finally shaking his head. Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. These so-called heirs? They're nothing more than inventory. Olivia clenched her fists, fighting to keep her emotions in check. You mean? James smirked. Organs, labor, trafficking, whatever pays the most. Luna let out a strangled gasp, but Olivia remained. Ed still, processing the weight of his words. Why tell me this? She asked. James's smirk widened. Because it doesn't matter. You're already in too deep. A slow clap sounded from the shadows. All heads turned as a new figure emerged, a woman dressed in a sleek black suit, her eyes glinting with amusement. James, the woman purred. You talk too much. James stiffened. Ma'am, I was handling it. She waved a hand, silencing him. Clearly, you weren't. She turned her gaze to Olivia. You've been causing quite a stir, Miss Olivia. It's rather impressive. Olivia met her gaze, her mind racing. Who are you? She asked. The woman smiled. You can call me Madame Joe. Luna let out a small whimper. Olivia didn't move. You seem to be under the impression that you have a choice in this matter, Madame Joe continued. Let me make something clear, you don't. With a snap of her fingers, several figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding Olivia and Luna. Olivia's heart pounded. But she didn't show fear. Because she had a plan. The moment Madame Jo's men surrounded Olivia and Luna, a familiar sense of dread crept into Olivia's stomach. But fear wasn't an option. Not anymore. She had lived through betrayal, had tasted death itself. She wasn't about to let them have control over her fate again. Luna whimpered beside her, shrinking as two men grabbed her arms. Olivia, however, stood her ground, locking eyes with Madame Jo. You look remarkably calm, Madame Jo mused, stepping forward. The dim lighting from the flickering street lamp cast eerie shadows over her sharp features. Most people would be trembling by now. Olivia smirked. Most people don't come prepared. Madame Jo's eyebrow arched, clearly intrigued. Oh. And what exactly are you prepared for? Olivia's fingers curled into fists at her sides, but she kept her expression neutral. You think you've won just because you have numbers? Numbers don't mean anything if your entire operation is exposed. James scoffed from beside Madame Jo, arms crossed over his chest. Big words from a girl who walked right into our trap. Olivia turned her sharp gaze on him. You think I didn't expect a trap? A faint buzzing filled the air. Then, from the shadows, a series of bright red dots appeared, laser sights, all aimed directly at Madame Zhou and her men. Madame Zhou's expression flickered for a fraction of a second before she let out a slow, deliberate laugh. Well played. Olivia didn't smile. Tell your men to stand down. Now. James cursed under his breath, but Madame Zhou held up a hand, signaling her people to lower their weapons. Smart girl, she said, her voice as smooth as silk. But that doesn't mean you've won. Olivia tilted her head. I don't need to win. I just need to make sure you don't. Luna was still trembling. G beside Olivia, her breathing ragged. She had clearly underestimated the severity of the situation, and Olivia knew she wasn't built for this kind of pressure. We're leaving, Olivia announced, taking a step back toward the station exit. The laser sights stayed locked onto Madame Zhou's men, ensuring they wouldn't dare make a move. Madame Zhou smirked. Leaving? Oh, Olivia, you wound me. You don't even want to stay and hear my offer? I'm not interested in whatever lies you're about to spin. Olivia replied coldly. Madame Zhou sked, shaking her head. Who said anything about lies? You're a smart girl. Surely you've realized by now, your little interference hasn't even scratched the surface of what we do. Olivia kept her expression unreadable, but Madame Zhou's words sent an uneasy chill down her spine. I don't need to scratch the surface, Olivia countered. I just need to expose it. Madame Zhou let out another laugh, her amusement unwavering. And yet, you still don't understand. We are not criminals, dear girl. We are businessmen. Our operation runs deeper than you could possibly imagine. Even if you scream your truth from the rooftops, you'll only be met with silence. Olivia hesitated. Not because she was afraid, but because she knew Madame Zhou wasn't bluffing. The way she spoke, the sheer confidence in her voice, it meant they had powerful people backing them. But Olivia had something they didn't, the will to destroy them at all costs. Come on, Luna, Olivia said, gripping the girl's wrist and pulling her along. They backed away slowly, eyes locked onto the enemy. The moment Olivia felt the cold night air against her face as they stepped out of the station's threshold, she knew she had bought them a small victory. But this war was far from over. They made it back to their dormitory in silence, Luna still in shock, Olivia deep in thought. The moment they shut the door behind them, Luna collapsed onto her bed, shaking. Oh my God, Olivia. We could have died. Olivia remained by the window, staring out into the darkness. No, she corrected. You could have died. They were never going to kill me. Luna's eyes widened. What do you mean? Olivia turned, her expression unreadable. They need me for something. That's why Madame Zhou didn't order them to shoot. Luna swallowed. So, what do we do now? Olivia clenched her fists. Now? We get ahead of them. Before they get ahead of us. Luna looked pale, but she nodded. How? Olivia finally smiled, cold and determined. We burn their empire to the ground. Olivia barely slept that night. Her mind was racing, crafting a plan so airtight that not even Madame Zhou's powerful network could escape its consequences. If they wanted to use her, she would turn the tables and make them pay. At dawn, she opened her laptop and began typing furiously. She needed leverage, something. That would expose Madame Zhou's operation and force her hand. But where to start? She thought back to the train station. James's slip of the tongue, he had mentioned inventory. That meant documentation, ledgers, and records. No organization this large functioned without paper trails. If she could get her hands on their data, she would have evidence that no one could ignore. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Olivia? It's barely morning, what's wrong? I need a favor, Olivia said, her voice firm. And I need you to trust me. There was a pause, then a resigned sigh. You always ask for trouble. What do you need? Olivia's contact, a skilled hacker known only as Shade, was someone she had met years ago under questionable circumstances. Shade owed her a favor, and now was the time to cash it in. EED access to Madame Joe's network. Anything you can find, financial records, transport logs, communications. Shade whistled. That's a big ask. You're not playing with small-time crooks here. I know, Olivia replied. But I also know she has weaknesses. Every empire does. Fine. I'll start digging. But if I go down, I'm taking you with me. Deal. Hours passed in agonizing silence. Olivia stayed glued to her phone, waiting for Shade's update. By evening, a message popped up. Shade found. D something. Sending it over now. A file appeared in her inbox. Olivia's eyes widened as she skimmed through it. Names, dates, locations, Madame Joe's entire trafficking ring was mapped out in chilling detail. The inventory James had referred to was real, and the numbers were horrifying. Luna peeked over Olivia's shoulder, her face pale. What is this? Olivia exhaled sharply. Proof. Armed with the evidence, Olivia had options. She could go public and expose Madame Joe Instan. TLY, but that would put a target on her back. No, she needed to be smarter. She sent an encrypted message to Madame Joe. Olivia, we need to talk. I have something you'll want to see. Minutes later, Madame Joe's reply came. Madame Joe, you're playing a dangerous game, girl. Olivia smiled, fingers poised over the keyboard. So are you. Let's see who wins. Olivia sat in the dimly lit cafe, her fingers drumming against the table as she waited. The city hummed outside, but her world had shrunk to this one moment. She was prepared, armed not just with Shade's damning files but with an unwavering resolve. Madame Joe would not get the upper hand tonight. The door creaked open, and Madame Joe stepped in. She moved with practiced grace, exuding power with every step. Her dark eyes locked onto Olivia's, filled with amusement and a hint of curiosity. You called, Madame Joe said, sliding into the seat across from her. I did, Olivia replied smoothly. And I think you'll be very interested in what I have to say. Madame Joe smiled. You're brave, I'll give you that. But bravery without caution is foolish. Olivia ignored the veiled threat and slid a flash drive across the table. Everything you've worked so hard to keep hidden is on here. Trafficking logs, financial transactions, client lists. Shade is very thorough. Madame Joe picked up the drive, inspecting it like it was an insignificant trinket. And what do you want? I want you to let go of your operations. Disband everything before I take this public. Madame Joe chuckled, shaking her head. You don't understand how the world works, dear. Power isn't something you can just demand. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Then you don't understand how much you stand to lose. Madame Jo studied Olivia for a long moment. Then, with an air of indulgence, she leaned back. "You're ambitious. But you're also naive if you think you can win this game." "I don't need to win," Olivia countered. "I just need to make sure you lose." The flicker of annoyance in Madame Jo's expression told Olivia she had struck a nerve. She pressed forward. "I've already made copies of everything. If anything happens to me, the files go public. I have contingencies in place." Madame Jo exhaled slowly. "You remind me of myself when I was younger." "I'll take that as a compliment." A long silence stretched between them before Madame Jo finally spoke. "Fine. I'll consider your terms. But don't think for a second that this is over." "It's over when I say it's over," Olivia replied, standing up. Madame Jo watched her with calculating eyes as Olivia walked out. The battle wasn't won yet, but for the first time, Olivia knew she held the advantage. The air was thick with tension as Olivia stepped out of the cafe. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but her mind remained sharp. She had just issued the biggest challenge of her life to Madame Jo, and now the pieces were set in motion. There was no turning back. As she walked down the dimly lit street, a figure emerged from the shadows. Shade. His presence was like a whisper of danger, but Olivia had come to rely on him. "She took the bait," Olivia said, barely pausing. Shade nodded. "She'll try to retaliate." "But you already knew that." "I'm counting on it." The next morning, Olivia found an unmarked envelope slid under her apartment door. Inside was a single photograph, her parents, sitting at a cafe, unaware they were being watched. A message was scrawled on the back in elegant handwriting, "Back down while you still can." Olivia's fingers clenched around the paper. Fear licked at her resolve, but she pushed it aside. She had expected this. "She wants me afraid. I won't be." She picked up her phone and dialed Shade. "They're going after my family," she said the moment he answered. "Then it's time to move first," Shade replied. "We tighten the noose." Olivia spent the day executing her counterattack. Using the information Shade had gathered, she began releasing small but damaging leaks about Madame Jo's network. Just enough to cause ripples, but not enough to reveal her full hand. By nightfall, she received an other message, this time from Madame Jo herself: "You have my attention." A meeting was inevitable. Olivia wasn't afraid. She was ready. Olivia had been waiting for this moment. She had spent weeks meticulously planning her strategy, anticipating every possible move Madame Jo could make. Now, as she sat in the sleek black sedan driven by Shade, her pulse pounded with anticipation. The city lights flickered outside the tinted windows, casting eerie reflections on the glass. "This could be a trap," Shade said, his voice even. "I know," Olivia replied. "That's why we have to make sure we're 2 steps ahead." Shade gave a curt nod. She agreed to meet at the Scarlet Lotus. Neutral ground, but still under her control. Olivia smirked. "Then let's make sure we tilt the advantage in our favor." As the car rolled to a stop outside the lavish, dimly lit establishment, Olivia took a deep breath. The doorman barely spared her a glance before stepping aside. Shade remained close, his presence an unspoken promise of protection. The interior of the Scarlet Lotus was decadent, filled with golden chandeliers and velvet-draped walls. The scent of jasmine lingered in the air as Olivia was led to a private room at the back of the establishment. Madame Jo sat at a grand circular table, sipping a glass of deep red wine. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and amusement as Olivia entered. "Ah, the prodigal girl arrives," Madame Jo said smoothly. "I must say, I am impressed by your tenacity." Olivia took a seat across from her. "I prefer persistence." Madame Jo chuckled. "Persistence. A dangerous trait in the wrong hands." "I suppose we'll find out whose hands are more dangerous," Olivia said coolly, folding her hands together. Madame Jo leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "You've been quite a thorn in my side, Olivia. Exposing pieces of my network, stirring discontent. You've certainly kept me on my toes." "That was the idea." The older woman smirked. "Tell me, dear, what is it you want?" Olivia met her gaze, unflinching. "I want you out of business. I want every single person you've manipulated, trafficked, and hurt to be freed. And I want to watch as your empire crumbles." Madame Jo clapped her hands together in mock applause. "How noble. But do you truly think it's that simple?" "I think it's inevitable," Olivia countered. "I have all the evidence I need. The authorities, the media, even your own people, many of them are already turning against you." Madame Jo's smile didn't waver, but Olivia noticed the slight tension in her shoulders. "And yet, here you are, sitting across from me, instead of making your move." "Because I want you to know that you're finished before it happens," Olivia said, her voice laced with certainty. "I want you to feel the weight of everything you've done as it all comes crashing down." For the first time, a flicker of genuine irritation passed over Madame Jo's features. "You underestimate me, child." Olivia tilted her head. "Do I?" Madame Jo exhaled slowly. "You're playing a dangerous game." "I know." A long silence stretched between them. Then Madame Jo swirled her wine glass, her eyes dark with thought. "Very well. Let's see if you truly have the upper hand." The moment Olivia left the restaurant, she knew the next few days would be a whirlwind. Madame Jo wasn't going to go down without a fight, but Olivia had anticipated that. She had spent too long preparing for this, and now every piece was falling into place. As she slid back into the car, Shade looked at her expectantly. "How did it go?" Olivia allowed herself a small smile. "Exactly as planned." Shade nodded. "Then it's time to make our move." The war had begun. Olivia knew that Madame Jo would not go down without a fight. She had built an empire on fear and control, and those like her never surrendered willingly. But Olivia wasn't looking for surrender, she was looking for destruction. The night air was thick with tension as Olivia and Shade stepped into the dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was here that Madame Jo's operations thrived, trafficking, illegal gambling, and dark business deals that spanned continents. Olivia had spent weeks gathering intelligence, working with informants, and ensuring that every move Madame Jo made was accounted for. Shade scanned the area with sharp eyes, his posture rigid. "She's here," he murmured. "I can feel it." Olivia nodded, gripping the small recording device in her pocket. If this meeting went as planned, it would be the final piece of evidence she needed. If it didn't, well, she had other means of ensuring Madame Jo never saw the light of day again. Madame Jo was waiting for them. She stood in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by a handful of guards, her expression unreadable. She wore a sleek black dress, exuding power and confidence, but Olivia could see the way her fingers drummed again. Stay her hip, a telltale sign of unease. "Olivia," she greeted, her voice silky but sharp. You've been busy. I like to stay productive, Olivia replied coolly. Madame Jo smirked, glancing at Shade. And you've brought your little bodyguard. Smart. But it won't change anything. I think it will, Olivia countered. I have everything I need to dismantle your entire operation. The authorities are waiting for my signal. Madame Jo let out a slow, measured laugh. Do you think? I built this empire without preparing for situations like this? I have contingencies, my dear. You cannot win. Olivia's lips curled into a smirk. Then why do you look so nervous? A flicker of doubt crossed Madame Jo's face, and Olivia knew she had struck a nerve. The moment Madame Jo signaled her guards, Olivia moved. Shade had anticipated the betrayal and was already in motion, taking down the nearest guard with swift precision. Chaos erupted as gunfire rang out, echoing in the vast space of the warehouse. Olivia darted behind a stack of crates, her heart pounding. She pulled out her phone, hitting the send button on a pre-written message. Within seconds, sirens blared in the distance. Madame Jo's face twisted in fury. You think I'm going to let you walk away from this, she snarled, drawing a gun from the folds of her dress. I think, Olivia said, stepping out from cover, that your time is up. She threw a flashbang from her pocket, the explosion of light and sound disorienting the guards. Shade seized the opportunity, incapacitating the last of them. Madame Jo staggered back, momentarily blinded, and Olivia took her chance. With a swift movement, she knocked the gun from Madame Jo's hand and pressed her foot against the older woman's chest, pinning her to the ground. You lost, Olivia said, her voice steady. And now, everyone will know what you've done. The warehouse doors burst open as law enforcement flooded in. Madame Jo's empire had fallen. The next morning, news outlets across the country reported on the dismantling of Madame Jo's crime syndicate. The once feared woman was now in custody, facing charges that would keep her locked away for life. Olivia stood on the balcony of her apartment, sipping her coffee as she watched the city wake up. The fight was over. The ghosts of her past had been avenged. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Shade joined her, leaning against the railing. So, what now? Olivia smiled. Now? I start over. And with that, she walked away from the past, stepping into the future she had fought so hard to reclaim. The weight of the past had finally lifted from Olivia's shoulders. Madame Jo's reign of terror had come to an end, and with it, the nightmares that had haunted Olivia for so long. But just because one battle had ended didn't mean her journey was over. As she sat in her favorite cafe, sipping on a warm latte, she reflected on the whirlwind of events that had led her here. The chaos, the danger, and the betrayal, it all felt like a lifetime ago. And yet, deep inside, Olivia knew she had changed. She wasn't the same naive girl who had once trusted blindly. She had grown, become stronger, and more importantly, she had found a purpose beyond revenge. Shade entered the cafe, sliding into the seat across from her. His ever-watchful eyes scanned the room before settling on Olivia. You look different, he remarked, a small smirk playing on his lips. Olivia chuckled, stirring her latte absent-mindedly. That's because I am different. Shade nodded approvingly. So, what's next for you? She took a deep breath, considering the possibilities. For the first time in a long time, she had no enemies to chase, no vendettas to fulfill. The future stretched before her, full of endless opportunities. I want to help people, she finally said. Not just take down criminals, but really help. Maybe start an organization, one that exposes corruption, helps victims find justice. Shade's expression turned serious. That's a dangerous path, Olivia. You know that. She smiled, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. I've already walked through the fire. What's a little more danger? As they continued their conversation, Olivia's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, expecting a routine message. But as soon as she saw the sender's name, her heart skipped a beat. Unknown number. A single text message stared back at her. You think it's over? It's only just begun. Olivia's fingers tightened around her phone. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. Shade noticed her shift in demeanor immediately. What is it? He asked, his voice laced with concern. She turned the phone around, showing him the message. His face darkened. We need to find out who sent this. Olivia exhaled slowly. Just when she thought she could finally breathe, the shadows of her past had found a way to creep back in. Looks like my new beginning might have to wait, she murmured. Shade's eyes met hers, unwavering. Then let's finish this. And just like that, Olivia found herself pulled back into the fight, one final battle to ensure her past never came back to haunt her again. The message on Olivia's phone had shattered her illusion of peace. She had thought her war was over, but this was a stark reminder that loose ends still needed to be tied. Shade's expression was unreadable as he scrolled through the details of the text message. We need to trace this number, he finally said. Whoever sent this knows you're watching. Olivia took a deep breath, nodding. I have a few contacts who can help. I'll get to work on tracking them. Shade leaned back, crossing his arms. And what if it's a trap? What if someone wants to lure you out? A smirk touched Olivia's lips. Then we let them think they succeeded. Olivia and Shade worked through the night, tracing the origins of the message. The signal had bounced through multiple locations, but one pattern emerged. It was tied to an abandoned warehouse outside the city. By morning, they had a plan. Olivia would go in alone, appearing vulnerable, while Shade would be watching from a distance. If this was indeed a trap, they would spring it on whoever was waiting. You sure about this? Shade asked as he handed Olivia a concealed weapon. I have to be, she replied. If I don't put an end to this now, I'll never be free. As she approached the warehouse that evening, adrenaline surged through her veins. The doors were slightly ajar, as if inviting her inside. Taking a deep breath, she stepped in, her fingers tightening around the grip of her weapon. Welcome back, Olivia. The voice sent a shiver down her spine. From the shadows, a figure emerged, one she had long thought dead. Her past had returned, and this time, it wasn't going to let her go. The warehouse was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of rust and damp concrete. Olivia's fingers flexed around the grip of her concealed weapon as she faced the figure emerging from the shadows. Surprised to see me? The voice was laced with amusement, yet carried an undercurrent of menace. Olivia's heart pounded, but her expression remained unreadable. I don't believe in ghosts. The man stepped into the faint light, his features unmistakable. It was someone she had buried in the past, someone she had once trusted. Logan. His smirk widened. Miss me? Shade's voice crackled in her earpiece. Olivia, get out. Now. She ignored him. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the final piece of the puzzle, the last ghost of her past that needed to be exorcised. "You should be dead," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the turmoil swirling within her. Logan chuckled. "You underestimate me, as always. But I have to give you credit, you've come far." Her grip tightened. "I didn't come for compliments." "No, I suppose you didn't." He took a slow step forward. "But did you ever stop to ask yourself why I'm still here?" Shade's voice returned, more urgent. "This isn't right, Olivia." He was never working alone. Olivia's breath hitched. She scanned the shadows, her instincts screaming at her. Logan was a master manipulator. If he was standing before her, it was because he wanted to be. And then, it hit her. The trap wasn't for her, it was for Shade. She spun on her heel, bolting for the exit, just as the warehouse doors slammed shut. The sound of metal locks clicking into place echoed through the space. Logan laughed. "Looks like you finally figured it out." Olivia pressed a finger to her earpiece. "Shade, get out of there. It's a setup." Silence. Her pulse raced. The air suddenly felt too thick, her senses heightened. Logan was no longer the biggest threat in the room. Whoever else was pulling the strings had just made their move. She had walked into the lion's den, and the hunt was far from over.